All right, and there's our peppy music opening. Welcome to OEG Live. This is Open Education Global's live show on the internet, and we're here to have an exciting conversation about the upcoming OE Global Conference. And I'm Alan Levine, coming to you from lands a little bit to the east of my colleagues. I'm on Treaty 4 territory where I'm new here, and I'm a settler nonetheless, but I really feel connected to this place and my colleagues here. So we're welcoming to the show from NorQuest College, Robert Lawson and Sarah Smyth. And so I'll ask you to say hello, and also Connie Blomgren from Athabasca University, all part of the program committee. And my colleague Marcela Morales is here in the studio. So I want to give a chance for everybody to say hello. And Robert, why don't you start? How are you feeling about the conference being a little bit more than a month out?
Yeah, it's very scary. As I said, I had a stress dream the other day, so I'm worried about it, but I'm also very excited about it. And I just want to introduce myself a little bit. My name's Robert Lawson. I'm an instructional designer at NorQuest, and I feel blessed to be living and working on Treaty 6 territory, Métis Region number 4. And, NorQuest College is a college that is known for its diversity. And this area has always been very diverse, though. It's been a meeting place and a home for many Indigenous groups, including the Cree, the Denetah, the Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux. So I just think it's been a blessing to be able to live and work on this land, and to have the opportunity to interact with wonderful colleagues at NorQuest, and to interact with my Indigenous relatives, from whom I've learned a lot. Not only about decolonization, but also about philosophy and thought, about Cree culture. And I hope Darrion can join us shortly, because he's been a great teacher about the concept of relationality and how important that is to the Cree. So I'm very excited about the fact that we're incorporating, or that we have, we're looking at Indigenous knowledge as a very important component of the conference, and that really excites me.
All right. And we definitely want to hear so much more about this and how it's part of. We're going to hear also how it's really ingrained into the culture and the threads of NorQuest College itself, which we want to learn about. But I'm going to zip over now to Sarah Smyth, who's also from NorQuest and has been just a powerhouse of energy and getting things done on this project. So how's it been for you, Sarah?
It's been really great. There are so many fantastic initiatives as part of this conference, and working with OEGlobal's been just fabulous. You're a marvelous partners to work with, and I've made great friendships. And yeah, I'm really excited for the conference. I'm really excited to seeing everyone in person, and just all the things that we've talked about and planned come to fruition. It's going to be a really fantastic 3 days, and the pre-conference is going to be amazing too. So there are still a few seats for the pre-conference, and I really encourage people to look at it because it is going to be incredibly special.
Can you tell us a little bit more about? We'll just jump into it, like in the middle of introductions, because I know we got a request this morning from someone saying, "Are there still tickets available?" But what's the pre-conference event?
I'd like to defer to my program committee members.
Okay.
If they'd like to talk about it, but it is going to be held at Fort Edmonton Park at the Indigenous Learners Experience, which is a new initiative that they've set up in the park and is incredibly special. exhibit. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for, that they've put together, that sort of documents the Indigenous history up to a sort of a pivotal point where the Métis starts, and then what happens from there on. And it's an incredibly moving experience. And we're going to be, Robert, I want to throw to you because I know I feel like I'm more the logistics side, and I don't want to talk about the program so
I'm
much
sorry,
because
I
feel
put
like,
you on the spot, Sarah.
yes,
So.
that's okay, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job. It's the pre-conference was really set up to introduce people to the local Indigenous culture because it's such an important part of the program, and we wanted people to experience that, and we wanted to have somebody who's a very experienced teacher leading this group. So we have somebody named Janine Bell. She's Inuit, and she will be leading the pre-conference. And as you mentioned, Sarah, it involves a visit to Fort Edmonton Park. Really great place to visit, one of the highlights of Edmonton. The Indigenous people's experience, though, as you mentioned, is very moving. It's a very powerful experience to experience, what the local culture here was like before colonization, and then the detrimental effects of colonization. So highly recommended.
All right,
So much more erudite than me, Robert.
I don't even know what that word means.
I don't use it very often, but I know it when I hear it. And so I just want to welcome to the studio Darian Letendre, who is part of the program committee, and we're just excited to talk about. We kind of just went off track already in talking about the opening ceremony, but can you just let us know, Darren, give a little hello, and how are you feeling now about the conference being about a month away?
Yeah, good afternoon, friends. Apologies for the tardiness. I had some issues signing in, but I'm happy to be here. I guess I can introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Darian Lalonde. I'm a Nahiao Métis man from Kelly Lake Cree Nation and Horse Lake First Nation. That's up in Treaty Number 8 territory. Currently a humble guest here in Amiskwaci, Waskahigon, Treaty Number 6 territory, being sustained by the beautiful North Saskatchewan River. And all of our non-human relations that we share this beautiful territory with. And to answer your question, very excited about the conference. I know it came up pretty quick. I know us in the program planning team and our friends at OEGlobal have been planning since last year, and we're really excited with the conference. I think it's a great way to bring people together and to connect on things like Indigenous ways of knowing, sustainability, open education, and really the power that comes from that. So I'm really glad to be here today and to join the discussion.
All right. Thank you, Darian. And I hope to hear a lot more from you. And I would just want to say hello to Connie Blomgren, who's from Athabasca University, and she's on the program. She's an OEG board chair, and I'll let her talk.
Well, thank you so much. It's really fun to be here. I didn't think it was going to be this much fun, but it's kind of nice that it is feeling fun. And I want to acknowledge that I live in the present day Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta, and the lands of the Nipsiakil Blackfoot Nation. My home is in the traditional territories of the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Irha Nakota nations. This area is also part of the Métis homeland. And I take personal responsibility to understand our shared history and my personal role in conciliation and reconciliation. And those are stories of both great sadness and terrible atrocities, but there's also a narrative of hope. And so Nitstiaki, I am grateful for our shared living environment. And today in sunny southern Alberta, it is a beautiful sunny day. We had some rain this morning, and the hazy smoke has sort of cleared from the fires. So there is hopefulness in the air, I guess, after a rain. And I think that's really part of the narrative of OEGlobal, especially the conference. I think that there's some really positive things that we've tried to pay attention to and nurture And it's exciting to just be working with all these great people, preparing for other great people to come and learn alongside each other.
Fantastic. So we should say weather. What should people be prepared for in a month from now?
Everything.
They're saying we're going to have a very cold winter. The trick is, when does it start?
Yeah.
So we would suggest always bringing layers. And then we're going to have a lovely initiative that I'm working on that if it does get cold and you invest in some outerwear that you're not going to use again, you'll be able to donate it, and we'll pass it on to deserving communities.
That's fantastic. And of course, we encourage anybody watching now, this is your prime opportunity to ask questions about things more important than the weather. Let's talk about what's happening at the conference. What can anybody share what they're most excited about, or what they feel is like a really unique thing that this team has brought forward for the conference?
Yeah, you know what? I think I'll jump in there, Alan. I was sitting backstage and just kind of listening to somewhat of my relatives and colleagues were sharing about. And one thing that really excites me about our conference, and one thing that I think is really unique that our conference attendees are going to maybe find interesting, is the theme of braiding and the interweaving of knowledge, which definitely, for me, is significant in my culture. So a lot of Indigenous peoples, we braid our hair, and there's a lot of significant meaning in that. And so we've introduced that element to our conference, and including some of the ways in which we've organized some of our conference tracks and themes, right? We want people to experience a level of connection that maybe they haven't seen too often before. It's something that is really being, introduced and revitalized in a lot of these spaces. So for me, I think, being able to integrate some of my own ways of knowing and being as an Indigenous person into our conference to really heighten the experience for our guests is something that I cherish. I'm very grateful for, and hopefully, our conference attendees will see some of that and experience it, even if they're not even thinking about it, right? The ways in which we've developed the program with this spirit in mind of connection and the interweaving of experience and knowledge, whether it's Indigenous ways of knowing or Western ways of knowing. I think we've really done well with interweaving these ways of knowing, and I think we'll see that in our conference. So for me, I think that's a very exciting aspect of our conference.
And I agree as well. It's been one of the more fascinating, and I'm eager to figure out ways people can experience this, but like, we can't create it, we introduce it, and we're asking them to sort of help us, fathom this through, because as I, think about it, a conference is all these, like, you have these little buckets of presentations and tracks and events and things. And so what's the larger way we can tie all these experiences together? And I'm so excited about this theme. It's very brave. I don't know if has it been done at a conference before?
From the conferences I've experienced, it's very, it's the usual conference. It's everything's, like you mentioned, in buckets and siloed to their own particular topics and themes. But we decided to, as you mentioned, be brave. Show a little bit of courage, because learning about a way of knowing or a way of being that might not be your own way of knowing, takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of capacity. And so I'm very, proud of my colleagues and my relatives for undertaking this journey, and our friends at OEGlobal. This is such an important thing in the grand scheme of, reconciliation and just community, right? So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, and it's, I don't want to say it's groundbreaking by any means, but these, can often be uncharted waters, so to speak. So, it requires, a good amount of learning together, and so we move forward in that spirit.
Excellent.
Yeah, that excites me too. The, Darrion introduced me to the idea of two-eyed seeing, as well as Wakotuin, and just the idea of walking in two worlds and experiencing in the Indigenous and non-Indigenous perspectives on open education, I think is just so exciting. And I'm excited as well about the keynotes that we have. I think there's some wonderful events going on. We have Sandra Lamouche, who's a hoop dancer, and Actually, Darrion is one of our keynotes as well, and we'll be sort of setting the tone for the conference. And on the first day, we're going to have a welcoming ceremony with Kyle Stanley, who's an Indigenous performer. And I just find it really, really exciting. And Darrion mentioned reconciliation, and I hope in some way we're moving towards that maybe this conference is a step in that direction. I sincerely hope so.
Maybe if you don't mind, you were just telling me about your conversation with Kyle about the opening. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, Kyle Stanley is a fascinating person. He's originally from Saskatchewan, and he's Cree. I think he's from, is it Frog Lake? I think he said Frog Lake, right? And he experienced a number of challenges in his life, some terrible family tragedies. And, but the interesting thing was his story of rediscovering his Indigenous roots and, growing his hair, braiding his hair, and then rediscovering the drum and music and singing. And it just rejuvenated him and, restored purpose to his life after all these horrible family tragedies. And it was just riveting listening to him speak. And he's now established this performance group that will be opening the conference with a welcome ceremony. And I think it's going to be so wonderful for people to experience that.
And maybe because I love the concept. Tell us more about Wakotuin, which is and it's basically it's deeply woven into NorQuest colleges in so many ways, but this is also part of the conference about everything being interrelated. And so how does that drive everything that's happening?
Yeah, I think I can speak to that a little bit, and I think it's really interesting. So I kind of found my way into the program committee through sharing with Robert a Cree term, Wakotuin, which for me means something, for other people it means something else. But the way I elaborated with Robert is just this belief that, we're all related, and that goes above and beyond, as my elders and knowledge keepers would say, those who don't just look like us, dance like us, move like us, but it's really about all beings who share spirit. And this can really be applied to things like seasons, the wind, our animal relatives, our plant relatives, things that we might even assume are inanimate, but hold spirit, they hold purpose. So it's with that concept in mind that we move forward with this kind of kinship model. So it roughly translates, how I try to explain it to people is that it roughly means kinship, this idea that we're all related, not just as people, but as, as spiritual beings, and that's what I believe. And when you can apply this concept, it's a term to help understand our relationality with our environment, with our world. It is also a Cree natural law concept. So a lot of Indigenous peoples, not all Indigenous peoples, this is a Cree Nehiawak term that we use to identify our relation to space. And it helps us treat, our environments and our non-human relatives with a little bit more respect and consideration. And I think that is such a profound addition to a conference, that is predicated on things like open education and sustainable development goals and ways in which we can be more sustainable with not only our environment, but with each other. So Wakotuin for me is about relationships. It's about that interconnectedness with all beings, which I hope to share with people, help people understand. And, I think that will lead us down a much more sustainable world because it allows us to be more respectful in being and understanding. And I think it allows us to be respectful to ourselves, to have those sustainable relationships with our own being. And it places us in a much more, like a deeper space, I guess I could say. So that's my understanding with it. And I think that's what I can share with folks here. is this concept of Wakotuin. So just think about it as kinship, and we all understand kinship differently, but it applies. There's no wrong answer there. It's just for me, I go a little bit deeper. That's my way of knowing. That's how I've been taught. So, yeah.
And like a traditional idea of sustainability before we had the word sustainability. Can we talk some about the conference with its sustainability model and carbon neutral? That's also something that I don't think we've had to our previous conferences, and it really fits everything that's going on.
It was an opportunity. We've been working with Explore Edmonton quite closely on the conference, and it was an opportunity that they presented to us to deliver the conference as a net neutral offering. And so we've been working on calculating our carbon consumption, and people will have seen that in the registration process where they had to fill in their information so that we can buy offsets to create a carbon neutral event. And it's led to us thinking a lot about different aspects of the conference and what we can do to influence our footprint. And, from the meal choices to the signage to, just anything and everything we can think of, right through to digital swag. So this year, the conference will be handing out digital swag. We won't have physical swag. So lots of really great deals for you to get out and about in Edmonton. There's so many great things to do and experience. And so I've worked really hard with Explore Edmonton to find some really fun things for people to do while at the conference and before and after. So if you're staying longer, which we hope you are, for you to take advantage of and to see parts of Alberta or experience some things here in Edmonton, to really, get a feel for this part of the world. So I strongly encourage everyone who's coming, if you love your paper and pens, bring them, because we won't be supplying them, but we will have this marvelous digital swag for everyone to take advantage of, and we'll be promoting how to access that shortly.
That's fantastic. Thinking some about the program. So can we talk maybe high level about the way it's structured? Because you've all been so deeply immersed in shaping this. So, I mean, we obviously have tracks and things like that. But maybe from what you've been involved with, are there any sessions you're particularly that really stood out for you, or that you think people should really think about, putting on their checklist for the conference?
I think it's just when I look at the program, there are some sessions that really stand out for me and my interests, but I think it's just amazing when you look at it, the diversity of presentations and what people can expect in terms of the topics, in terms of the session types. We introduced a wild card this year for people who wanted to submit proposals that wouldn't fit into a particular category, either thematically or in terms of the structure. We have presentations from all over the world. As we look at the theme of the indigenization and open knowledge, and it's just amazing to see, as I mentioned before, Alan, to see people from Africa or Taiwan relating that Indigenous experience in their own context. For me, that's really, really fascinating. And we did have a meeting earlier today with someone who's Franco-Canadian and is going to be talking about the French-Canadian context and open education, and that would be a personal interest for me. But I just think there's just such a diversity of different sessions and people with different backgrounds. I think overall, it's really exciting when I look at the program.
And I just want to speak a bit too about the keynotes, Ellen, because there's, they are, given that keynote position, and Darrion will be starting us off, and then the next day we have Cable Green talking directly about sustainability and open science and processes that he's working with there. And then we have Sandra Lamouche coming, and not only is she a hoop dancer, she's an educator, and so her performance it's actually not actually maybe correct to just describe it as a performance, because it's experiential, and it's about also you as the person there in that time and space, in that shared communion with everyone, that you are learning through the dance, about the dance, and there's the opportunity to think about your own connection to pedagogy, openness, many things. I can see that as being a highlight. I'm really looking forward to it. I have seen her dance before and speak, and she's very powerful. And then we end with our last keynote there, Kayla Lawson, who will be talking about the 6 R's and looking at openness from an Indigenous perspective. And, there's some tensions there. There's different perceptions of what is knowledge and how do we take it up. And so I actually see the conference as a very experiential learning process, and something that I think might live in the hearts and minds of the delegates long after they leave. I know that I have been at Indigenous conference, and I still think about that conference many years later, what was going on there. So I think it has the potential to be either like a slow, transformational, personal type of experience, or maybe something that actually, grows into something larger. But, we often use that word experiential learning as educators. But I would say be prepared for being open to all sorts of interesting learning possibilities that occur in those really directed keynotes, but then in all the other offerings that the delegates have put together. And then, of course, our conversations at lunch and at the socials and those spaces. So I anticipate that we'll be thinking that it's been rich in many ways.
Very true. And I often suggest when you go to a conference, like, pick at least one session that you know nothing about, or that you may not put on your list because it's in your vein of interest, because there's always something to learn from a different topic or speaker. And so there's so much variety this year. How much was this like 4-dimensional chess to put together?
It was definitely a challenge. I recall those sessions in early July, Sarah, where you and I sort of sat down and first started to do it, to put together the provisional program. And how were we going to set it up? What should go where? How do we introduce the idea of braiding? And it was a big challenge to do it. But I think it's evolved really nicely. I like the way it's set up. So it's been rewarding too.
If I can just quickly
go ahead, Marcela, please.
Yeah, on that, I just want to say, well, first of all, how excited we are that the conference is just around the corner. It's been a year in the making. And I do remember, Robert, those conversations about the program and the rating and how fitting it would be for the open community. And just seeing it now, I invite everybody to go into the website and see the entire program and how difficult it would be to choose one. And now understanding the braiding element that we were discussing in July and seeing it come through and being able to see it is just so exciting. And it would be so difficult for me to answer your question, Alan, of what would be the session that I would be wanting to join, because there's so many of them that I would be super excited and looking forward to being part of. And I want to resonate with what Sarah was saying of how exciting it has been to work with the team. And I think that the care that has been put into the development of this conference that we are now going to see come true very soon is I can see that how the care that has been put into is going to be seen in the conference. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And I think that that also resonates in everything that we're going to be seeing during the conference. And how also what Darrion was saying of the braiding and connecting between the presentations and the ideas, and how that also resonates in how open operates and works. I'm just super excited. And maybe it's going to be an example that we can continue to do moving forward. And I'm super excited. Just want to say thank you and looking forward to seeing you all in person, because we, as many of them would know, we have not met in person. So we're really looking forward for that really soon. But going back to the topic that we were saying, Robert, of how difficult it has been to do the program, I think that what you guys come up with is just fascinating. I don't want to miss anything of it, and see this idea of the rating really come true in the content that we have that is so rich this year.
Yeah, it really is rich, and it's just wonderful to see interest, from all over the world, and presentations from just so many different backgrounds.
And the braiding too, we've been trying to embrace it. It's also, we want to allow people who can't be there. And so 2 of the rooms, every session happening in them are going to be live streamed, which of course isn't exactly the same as being there, but they include all the keynotes. And we're really hoping that people tune in and watch, and also think about ways that they can connect their own knowledge and experience and awareness to what's happening at the conference.
Yeah, and we would love people to reflect on what braiding means to them, and as they experience the conference, how did that impact your conference experience? And then maybe on the last day, on the Wednesday, we'll all come together and people will have an opportunity to maybe post on OEG Connect what their experience of braiding was. How did you find this idea of two-eyed seeing and walking in both worlds? I think it'd be very interesting to see what people say.
Absolutely. Okay, for people who are local, what's one thing that people should really go to see that maybe is not at the top list of like what the tourist suggestions are? Like, what's a real special thing or place that you really value about Edmonton?
La Poutine.
La Poutine. Is that like Mexican poutine? I mean, I've had pierogi poutine, which I thought was unusual.
Oh my gosh. Did you have to have a defibrillator afterwards, Alan?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
food is definitely one of the more connective things that we relate to, and so I find that most interesting.
Well, I always love a walk along the river. I mean, Edmonton has such beautiful parks and river valley, and at that time of the year, I love to walk among the trees and smell the leaves that have fallen, and it can be a really beautiful nature experience, actually not far away from downtown Edmonton along the river valley. So,
well, they'll be able to walk right across from the conference centre too, won't they, Connie? And just cross the road, and you can go at lunchtime and have a nature break. There's some very nice paths along right along there, which would be really nice. Hopefully we won't be up to our eyeballs in snow, but you just never know.
I think it might. I think we'll have beautiful weather. even bad weather is good weather, right? I mean, it's just what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah,
And
for me, I appreciate, living in a place of beautiful territory that gets to experience the four seasons, because a lot of, folks around the world, they don't get to experience this type of weather. And, for me, Alan, to answer your question of, what, some of our conference attendees, get out to the river valley. And, it really aligns with the theme of the connection. Because I think, Edmonton's river valley is one of the largest interconnected outdoor environmental spaces in all of North America, right? So I think that's something that I don't know if a lot of Edmontonians take for granted, but I know I definitely took it granted for a long time. And for me, it's such a great way. There is a lot of spaces within that are right central of our city that you can get there and you almost get so immersed in nature that you forget you're in a city. And I think that's a really special thing, right? Especially with, an urban landscape. And for me, I grew up in a bush territory. So, I'm very used to a little bit of extra solitude, which, can be difficult to find in an urban, setting. But our river valley is something that is special. It's very unique, and it has a lot of character. And, it's all about connection. And, for me, the land and our water is a great way to learn about yourself, to reflect on things like connection. And it might even be a space for some of our conference attendees to reflect on things like braiding and interweaving and this idea of connection and the ways we connect with the land and the water and ourselves, right? So I think that's something that I would highly encourage, and it's something that I find super special about this city.
That's a great, we need to make suggestions for people to make sure they get to experience it, because I think it would help to sort of step away for a moment and get connected to nature. And that, from everything I understand, is sort of like, that's how this place, it was a drawing to come here. And it was a natural, but it's also a human convergence. And now we have the world converging there for the conference, which is really exciting. YouTube audience, you have like the people here who can answer all your questions. Do you have anything you want to say, or you want to like make sure it gets on the program? You can put your request in through the chat, and we'll see it happens. But it's been a real pleasure to have this conversation. We're gonna have one in about 2 weeks, and I think we're gonna hopefully dive in deeper to both the conference vision of braiding and two-eyed seeing. And I'm really keen to find out and help people come to their understanding of this.
And, for me, I think, just for those of us who are joining today and, we'll have a chance to view is, braiding and two-eyed seeing has really been a guiding framework for our development of the conference. And I just want to share my excitement and my pride of the team who have decided to undertake this journey, alongside myself as an Indigenous person and some of our other Indigenous relations that have been part of our planning as well, including, people like Carrie, O'Shea, and Brittany, and Tibitha. They all contributed very valuably to this belief and this spirit of two-eyed seeing and braiding, right? And these are all, very in tune with Indigenous ways of knowing. But I think as humans, as people, we can really resonate with a lot of these themes because they're rooted in our lands and our territories and our waters and our non-human relatives. And that's where a lot of this knowledge comes from. And so, for our guests who decide to join us in October, think about the ways you connect with yourself, your families, your own mind, body, and spirit. I appreciate Paul's comment in the chat, that talks about, the mind, body, and soul, and, this idea of three, the number three, and how, you could take one strand of hair and it's really, you can break it easily. But the moment you start interweaving and putting them together, you create something with such tensile strength. It's strong. It brings things together and makes it a little bit more, robust and strong. And so I think that our conference attendees will hopefully see some of that. And I would encourage, to keep an eye out for some of the ways we've braided our sessions, for example. I think you made the comment, Alan, earlier that, more often than not, when you attend a usual conference, you hone in on something that you're interested in. And that's fine, do what makes you feel comfortable. But the ways that we've developed the program is we want people to step out of their comfort zones. We want to expose them to knowledge that they may not have otherwise been ever exposed to, right? So our sessions are intentionally interwoven and braided, and you'll see that in the conference programs, that you'll have, a session from this track, or different tracks, but they're part of the same session, and it provides our participants an opportunity to experience that interconnected nature, that interweaving of knowledge and experience that, they'll get a more, hopefully anyways, a wholesome, picture.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm just thinking too that we should, perhaps encourage everybody to think about this braiding. The other part is like, at any conference, there's probably more that you can't take in that you can. And so maybe this is a way we can sort of help people, highlight or connect to or form the braids later to what they weren't able to during the conference, because it's always an overwhelming experience.
That's such a great point too. It's your folks are going to come and they're going to take strands of knowledge, and they might not even realize it, and then you can put it together in the end. It's such a beautiful way of knowing and being, and it's something that I appreciate, obviously, as an Indigenous person. So.
And here's Evelyn with a question about, in addition to the things that are built into the conference, maybe a suggestion and message to what people can do to have less of that carbon footprint.
That's a great suggestion. We do have in the digital swag information about, and I can't think of it off the top of my head what it's called, touchdown to take off. I can't remember. But basically, as a conference attendee, you'll be able to use our public transport system, so that immediately lowers greenhouse gas emissions, that you're not taking taxis everywhere. So you can use our light rail transit, which we call the LRT, or our bus system for free. And all you need to do is just have your conference card to show, so that you can get around the city and explore in your time away from the conference, which will be a bit minimal. So might be either side of the conference, because we've got lots of fun things planned, and I'm hoping people are coming to the social events that we have on the Monday and Tuesday nights. And then the other practices, I think, is just around really, I guess, how are you using resources? When you're thinking about your needs for the conference, just to be cognizant of what you're using, the paper you're consuming. Can you use your computer? Can you turn your computer off at night so that you're not consuming electricity unnecessarily? Things like that. All very little things, but make an impact.
That sounds like a great question to sort of brainstorm, because I'm sure other people will think of some of those small things that will add up for a conference of several hundred people.
For sure.
Yeah, and it's exciting to hear from Agava and others for their first visit to Canada. That's pretty exciting as well.
You'll love it.
And I would also like to welcome our Spanish-speaking colleagues that are on the call. Bienvenidos Larisa, Juan José y Ana. Felices de que nos puedan acompañar. Estaremos encantados de seguir conectándonos con ustedes. Saben perfecto dónde encontrarnos. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Saludos.
Saludos.
Saludos. Just a welcome message to our friends.
And if I know we do, there's a lot of discussion about it's the technical thing, but can anybody describe this word cloud thing? I know it was used at the NOT conference, but I wasn't there. But we're trying to integrate something to help and support understanding of different languages.
I can speak to that. Well, at NOT, there was through open source software, an app was developed for multilingual near synchronous translation. And so when a speaker, like a keynote, is talking, off to the side, there was a large monitor. And I think it was like every minute to 2 minutes, the word cloud would change from French to English, English to Spanish, Spanish to Arabic. And so it was very interesting to see that translation happening and just helping you to understand, what it's like to sort of capture something in this app. And so we have work being occurring right now. There's some people from Athabasca University working with the machine learning program at NorQuest, and they are furthering that particular app so that our hopeful plan is that we will be able to have a dialect of Cree ready for the conference. So fingers crossed. It's a little bit of a challenge in different ways. So definitely there is the 4 languages ready, but some of that actually has to do with how machine learning draws on previous data, right? And the libraries and all the information that's sort of fed into to create understanding of how to produce the word, the words for the word cloud, right? And also additionally too, Cree is a verb-based language, whereas I believe most of those other languages are noun-based. So there's an emphasis. A word cloud tends to be nouns, if you look, and so I'm not sure how that's going to play out, what that means. The developers are working on it as we speak. They're very keen. Everyone likes a challenge. And again, it was just really exciting to be in the room when we were first talking about how we were going to try and bring this together. And it's really that people working alongside, not just cooperating, but collaborating in really meaningful and powerful ways. So we're working on the Word app, and hopefully it'll be ready for us in October. I mean, fingers crossed. I'm fairly confident it will be, but you know how these technical things sometimes go.
Yeah, they usually break, but then we fix them. But and again, it's less of being a transcription and more about kind of synthesizing significant themes and concepts that are happening in the room and seeing them represented in different languages. Hopefully, there's our braiding right there in terms of connecting. And I'm just fascinating just hearing and understanding the idea about a language being verb-based versus noun-based. That's a little bit mind-opening to think about.
Yeah, the machines have a long way to learn when it comes
to we can teach them, right?
Yeah, they're a little bit behind us, I think. So, I appreciate the work that's been going into the word cloud, and I think it's so important, in terms of language revitalization, especially when we think of, the years of colonization and the languages that have been taken from Indigenous peoples. It's important to find ways that we can continue to uphold and uplift those languages and learn more about them. The Cree language, as Connie mentioned, is verb-based, right? It's very descriptive. And I think that just comes from generations upon generations of living within your environment and just learning to describe it, rather than, see it for what it is, rather than try to come up with any specific term for it. I joke with people because in the Nahilic language, dog is a Tim, and then we say Mr. Tim, which just means big dog, and that's describing a horse. So so horse is just a big dog, and it's really funny that when you put those together, it's just very descriptive language. And the one thing that I really love about our Indigenous languages is they help us understand the places we come from, our territories, the non-human relatives and spiritual relatives that we share space with, right? It gives them meaning, and it just describes them for what they are, so it's such a special thing. And I'm hoping that through the word cloud that we can create connection, because again, going back to the Cree term Wakotuin, right, is I think it doesn't matter what culture you come from or what's your background. All over the world we have understandings for what kinship means to us, right? And so maybe your word for kinship is different than but the understanding is there, right? We can build upon those things and we can connect through those things. So language is a powerful tool for connection, and we hope to provide some of that for our conference attendees.
All right. I so appreciate everybody joining us, both in the studio and watching on YouTube. And this will be recorded later and made available. And again, we'll be having another one on the 21st. And we'll share the details on that to go more into this fascinating concept of braiding and two-eyed seeing. And that'll be exciting because it's a little bit closer to the conference. So let's do our whatever way we want to say goodbye and thank you,
Alan,
for participating.
before we go, sorry,
Yes.
Annette has a good question.
Okay.
About can we present in our first language and that other conference participants can have their presentations translated into their first language. The word cloud is actually going to be in our keynote space and won't be in every presenting room. So I think it'll be just part of the keynotes, as I understand, Connie. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Annette?
Yeah, and again, it's not purely a translation tool. It's somewhat of a synthesis tool,
Yes.
and very interesting. And of course, we do want these universal translators that the science fiction shows have promised us, and getting a little bit closer. But as Darrion led us, you're never going to get it exactly right, and so we're always going to have to be having our human understanding and care on when we're looking at what these machines are returning to us, and that's something we'll be talking about at the conference.
Exactly.
So again, sorry, thank you, and we'll be saying goodbye and saludos and everything in whatever way that we feel like expressing, and we're just really excited to see people get excited about the conference, and thank you for tuning in.
Gracias.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
You all, bye-bye. Take care.
Okay, and we'll go out with